When I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did. I realized then their attention would inevitably focus on both our private and public lives. But I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become.
The British royal family embody strength, resilience and stability.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Queen Elizabeth II has reigned for over 70 years. She has seen world wars, presidential assassinations and revolutions. Nevertheless, the royal family remains a solid example of gleaming British excellence. Until the crown slips.
There was real fury in the palace. The Queen was very upset that she wasn't told about this.
Because royalty isn't always a fairy tale.
Particularly the issue of members of the royal family having conversations about the colour of Archie's skin.
Scandal, adultery and tragedy.
Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family.
I just think it's appalling.
And Diana's friends were all much, much younger, and so they started to lead separate lives very, very early on. She was living on a dream, really.
Take a look behind the facade and uncover the truth from the monarchy's darkest days. Learn of their tales of romance and heartbreak, death and duty, and understand what really goes on behind those palace walls. This is The Crown in Crisis. The only thing guaranteed in life is death. Like all families, the royal family mourns the death of loved ones and tries their hardest to keep up a front of solidarity as the family deal with their loss. Murder, assassinations, and beheadings plague the British family's royal history. However, they were considered a thing of the past under the rule of Queen Elizabeth II. The modern royal family represent freedom and is an example of justice. But when the people's princess, Lady Diana, was murdered in a tragic car accident, all that the crown represents was thrown into question. The story of Diana began as what many would consider a fairy tale.
Yesterday you were a nanny looking after children. Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run up to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles, I know I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
On the 29th of July, 1981, Prince Charles and Diana married in St. Paul's Cathedral. The wedding was seen by a global television audience of 750 million in 74 countries, showing the public's love for the new royal couple. However, this fairy tale could have been considered doomed from the very beginning.
My name is Ken Wharf. Formerly the protection officer bodyguard to the late Diana, Princess of Wales, and also to the young princes William and Harry. I left Scotland Yard in 2002 and was with the Royalty Protection Department from 1986 until my departure in 2002.
It's reported that Diana had only met with Prince Charles 13 times prior to their wedding.
You know, at that particular time, of course, in the mid-80s, their relationship was, you know, certainly a breaking point, and I think it'd been a breaking point almost from day one. But so there appeared to be little or no dialogue between them both.
For a 20-year-old young woman, being thrust into the limelight as the Princess of Wales may have been a lot to handle, especially with little or no previous experience.
My name is Ingrid Seward, and I am a royal biographer and editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine. Well, I think after they got married and they went on their honeymoon, I think even then things were starting to unravel a bit, because I don't think it matched what Diana had expected. She had this vision of being like a fairy princess and being carried away into the sunset. But the minute she was married, her husband was off working. I mean, it was, you know, he's always been a very hard worker, and he was devoted to his duty. And on the honeymoon, she was so in love, but he spent a lot of time reading books, which she didn't really quite understand. And I think on the honeymoon, it was when her bulimia, which she was already having a problem with, really took hold.
There could be several people here tonight who will reach a state of mental imbalance in the next year or so. Eating disorders, whether it be anorexia or bulimia, show how an individual can turn the nourishment of the body into a painful attack on themselves.
That, coupled with now becoming a mother of 2 young children, Prince William and Prince Harry, put even more strain on the shoulders of the young princess. And to make matters worse, her husband was having an affair with the woman he truly loved, Camilla Parker Bowles.
The palace said today that no third party is involved. Can that be right?
Ostensibly no, but given the fact that the Princess of Wales believes that Prince Charles's friendship with another woman, Camilla Parker Bowles, has cast a long shadow over that marriage, must be considered when you look at the failure of this 11-year union.
To the public, Diana's struggles were largely invisible. Everyone wanted to believe in a perfect royal love story, and so they did. The public adored Diana. Her constant displays of compassion allowed her to capture the hearts of the nation. She used her popularity to advocate and raise awareness for causes ranging from leprosy to mental health awareness, domestic violence, and the AIDS crisis.
I'm very happy to be here today, speaking to the very people who are at the forefront of research into a disease which has the potential to destroy so many millions of lives worldwide.
But despite the smile that she kept up in public and the adoration from thousands, she felt increasingly lonely inside.
Diana had children very, very quickly. I mean, William was born in 82, and she'd only got married in 81. And she had a very difficult pregnancy with William. So she was, she was getting used to being royal. She was pregnant. The marriage wasn't quite what she imagined it, but she thought it would all be all right. So she was living on a dream, really.
Charles put his affair on hold after marrying Diana. However, by 1986, things were fully back in swing for Charles and Camilla.
Well, Camilla liked Diana when she first met her because I think she thought Diana wouldn't be a threat. Diana was so young and so naive, and Camilla thought that this is perfect for Charles. She's pliable. But of course, Diana was not pliable at all. And I think Camilla thought she's gorgeous, tall and aristocratic, and would do exactly what Charles wanted. But of course, she wasn't like that at all. She didn't do anything that Charles wanted, and she was very strong. Diana was very strong, and she wasn't pliable at all. So I think Camilla completely misjudged that one.
But it wasn't only Charles who began looking for love outside of his marriage. Diana began numerous affairs of her own. It's alleged that Diana's affair with Army Captain James Hewitt started around a similar time that Charles picked things up with Camilla.
Were you unfaithful?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him.
Yeah, James Hewitt was in a relationship with Diana for a relatively short period of time. That's no disputing that. Diana herself admitted it. Hewitt was very compliant in the sense that, he understood the difficulties of being in a relationship with the Princess of Wales.
The moment that would ultimately launch Hewitt into the public consciousness came in 1986, when the officer met Princess Diana at a party thrown by her lady-in-waiting, Hazel West. Princess Diana's Royal Protection Officer, Ken Worth, wrote in his book, Diana, Closely Guarded Secret. He told her he was a riding instructor and, when she confessed she was afraid of horses, offered to help her overcome her fear. Not long after he became Diana's riding instructor, the two became romantically involved, an arrangement that would last for several years.
He was a very likeable character. I got on very well with him. And, for the period of time that I was working with Diana and him, her security was never compromised, which was due entirely to her being honest about where we were going, when we were going, and equally with him, asking and saying to me, what can I do again to help you, and so forth. So, the moral issues of that relationship, it's not for me to judge, but, it had to be that way. And, why try and make something unhappy out of at that particular time was something that was important for her. That relationship was important for a while. It was never, in my view, going to be long-lasting, which it wasn't.
The princess's marriage to Prince Charles was known to be rocky by the time she met Hewitt, and Charles was reportedly too busy carrying on his own liaison with his former girlfriend Camilla to care. Hewitt revealed that his relationship with the princess took place from 1986 to 1991. Further, the BBC reported that Lady Diana stopped taking Hewitt's telephone calls in 1992.
James Hewitt has also said the couple were undoubtedly spied on, but today was unwilling to talk about the tape.
I have no comment. No comment, I'm afraid.
Will you be prepared to make a comment to us later on in the day?
No, I have no comment.
The People's Princess reportedly had her fair share of fleeting affairs, but there was only one man she fell head over heels for, Hasnat Khan, a 26-year-old Pakistani heart surgeon.
Well, Hasnat Khan was a heart doctor, and Diana loved doctors, and she was fascinated by the human body and how it worked, and she loved healing and saving lives. So she was at the Brompton Hospital, which she used to visit at very odd hours, sometimes in the middle of the night, and she'd been doing a little round of visits there, just involuntary, not announced or anything. And she got into the lift with Hasnat Khan, and she just looked at him and thought, "You're wonderful."
It was love at first sight for Diana when she met Dr. Khan for the first time in 1995 at the Royal Brompton Hospital.
But he was very, very worried that the press would get hold of it, and he couldn't deal with that. He just couldn't.
The press, I think, generally get a bad name when you mention royalty, and you probably even get an even bigger, badder name when you mention Diana. It was relentless.
The press didn't really believe it. They thought he was overweight, he didn't look that attractive. There was lots of pictures of him walking down the street eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was because he was very, very busy, and he was very, very respected in his field, and he was going up, and he worked with Magdi Yaqub, and he was amazing. But he didn't have time to sit down and have proper meals or things. So, and he did fall in love with Diana, and it's actually tragic. It's tragic.
The cracks were finally revealed in her explosive BBC interview in 1995.
Martin Bashir, as now we know, was a deeply unpleasant and dishonest person. He persuaded her that instead of really talking about her charity, she should talk about herself and her marriage. And he was a very persuasive person. And she got on very, very well with him. And after a couple of clandestine meetings, they made this recording. And it was Diana doing what Charles had done with Dimbleby, Diana talking about her affair with James Hewitt, and how she felt there were three of us in this marriage, and what she felt about the royal family. It was much more explosive than Charles's interview. And to this day, people haven't forgotten it, and we're constantly being reminded about it because there's been an inquiry into how Bashir actually got Diana to talk so intimately about herself. What he did, in a nutshell, was he frightened her. He told her that her house was being bugged, that people were listening into her conversations, that her private secretary, Patrick Jeffson, was dishonest, all of which was total lies. And he really scared her. So he got her to talk out because she wanted to put her point of view forward. So it was a dreadful thing to do. And I think to this day, people are really angry about it.
The only secret Diana ever kept from me was the Martin Bashir interview for Panorama. I'd known Martin Bashir for a long time, and he was one of the men that I used to bring into the palace under a blanket because he didn't want to be seen by anyone. He was never a lover of the princesses, he was just a work associate. He persuaded the princess that she had to have a voice. She needed to tell her story, and what better a vehicle than Panorama. I was sent home on a Sunday afternoon. Strange, I thought. Why would she be sending me home? Go and spend some time with your family. I'm doing nothing this afternoon. Don't worry about me. The minute I'd left the palace, in through the back door comes Martin Bashir and his camera crew. And they set up the Prince of Wales sitting room, which she used for that interview. I had no idea that was being done. The next morning I came to work and noticed all the furniture had been moved. Why have you moved the furniture? It's not in the same place. I had a dance class. I had to move the furniture out of the way just so that we could exercise. Strange, very strange. She avoided me for the next 2 days, never spoke to me. How strange, I thought, she's hiding something. And then she told me that she made a recording with Martin Bashir for Panorama. What have you said? Well, I just put the record straight, she said. We didn't know what she'd said until we saw it. Something like 31 million people stopped in their tracks on that Monday night and couldn't believe what they were seeing. The Princess of Wales bearing her heart on national television. It was car crash television.
You had to either sink or swim, and you had to learn that very fast. With the media attention came a lot of jealousy. Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. It's Diana's unstable, and Diana's mentally balanced. And unfortunately, that seems to have stuck on and off over the years.
Your husband renewed his relationship with Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was.
Who was the enemy?
Well, the enemy was my husband's department.
Moving from a life where she was sharing an apartment with close friends to one where she was being waited on hand and foot in Buckingham Palace, with the only familiar face being Charles, a man she had only seen 13 times before, was a drastic change to adjust to. She reportedly constantly felt alone and isolated, adding to her declining mental health.
Well, Diana Spencer, as she was, is probably one of the most insecure people I'd ever met. And I think from her insecurities, and she was also a real mixture of being completely naive and yet worldly wise. So she was a barrel load of contradictions. I mean, Diana could be several people in one day. And I think one of the reasons that people are so fascinated with her still is that she was a different person with different people. I take that to be part of her insecurity, because she wanted to please the person she was talking to. She wanted to tell them what they wanted to hear. And so she was always different, so she was always fascinating.
She also revealed that she was so depressed that she tried to kill herself at one point. By the late 80s, Charles and Diana's marital problems had become public knowledge.
Well, Charles was so used to having all the attention on him, which it had been since he was born. He didn't like the idea that they walked down the street, say, when they were doing a royal engagement, and the crowd were calling, "Diana, Diana." So he felt surplus and didn't really know what to do with himself, and made lots of sort of rather pathetic remarks like, "There should be two of me, and if I cut myself in half." I mean, he didn't know what to do or say, and yes, it was a form of jealousy, yes, it was.
In December 1992, the Prime Minister announced the couple's amicable separation to the House of Commons. Charles and Diana officially divorced in 1996.
Good evening. Henry VIII did it and survived, but the Duke of Windsor got entangled with it and didn't. Princess Margaret wanted to marry one and couldn't. Divorce and the divorced have never been acceptable recent options for once and future kings. But tonight, suddenly, the defender of the faith and her church are all backing divorce for Prince Charles, confident he will never remarry. But in what condition is he expected to live in? And hasn't the whole affair made a nonsense of the established church?
Mr. West, would you describe to us, please, what happened this morning?
An application was lodged with the court to make the decree nisi absolute in the matter of the divorce petition between His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales. That application was considered, and at 10:27 this morning, the certificate making the decree nisi absolute was issued.
Well, what happened was, after Panorama, the Queen realised that this couldn't go on, because it was taking up all the news, and there were important things happening. The monarchy has no power; they only have influence, and at this moment, it was their shenanigans that were making the news, which is completely wrong. And she was very concerned about the institution of the monarchy with all this scandal going on. She thought, there's only one thing to do, and the Queen is head of the church, and the last thing she wants is a divorce. And so she must have thought about it very, very carefully, and decided that that was the only way forward to stop all the tittle-tattle and the Waleses and Diana and the battle of the war of the Waleses. It had to stop. So she basically ordered them to divorce. And it was a letter that they both received, hand-delivered just before Christmas. And there was no going back then.
After her divorce, Diana retained the double apartment on the north side of Kensington Palace that she had shared with Charles. She also moved her offices to Kensington Palace, but was permitted to use the state apartments at St James's Palace. Diana was also offered security by the Metropolitan Police's Royalty Protection Group, which she benefited from while travelling with her sons, but had refused it in the final years of her life in an attempt to distance herself from the royal family.
I think they were both very sad. Diana, in particular, never wanted to get divorced. In her heart, although she was with another man, Charles was the one that got away, and she always had a place in her heart for Charles. And it wasn't what she wanted, and she felt a failure. They both felt they'd failed, and they both felt they'd failed their children. So it was very, very sad for both of them.
A year after the divorce, Diana was on vacation in France with her partner, Dodi Al-Fayed, who she had allegedly met when he was playing in a polo match against her then-husband, Prince Charles.
Well, I knew Dodi, and he was probably one of the most charming people you could ever meet. And he was also rather cool. Had an American accent, beautifully dressed, and he was just, he was very nice to women. He wasn't a nasty person at all. He was a very sweet person, and he treated Diana like the princess she was. And nobody else had treated her like that. I mean, with Hasnat Khan, she had to sort of hide him at the back of her car, and they had to, they mostly ate in, or if they went out, she was in disguise. But with Dodi, she could show herself off. So it was the first really free relationship she'd had since her marriage had broken down. It's the first time she could actually be out with someone. And she was having a ball. I think she liked him very much. I don't know if she was in love with him, but she was in love with the idea of him because she immediately saw with her power and Dodie's power through his father, they could do great things together. So he fitted in to her blueprint for her future.
It was a very warm night in Paris. The room was stiflingly hot. I'd noticed two people in the corner, shady-looking characters behind a screen. Later, I realized they were the undertakers. And I approached the bed. It was a hospital bed, and the princess was covered in a white sheet. Her head and her feet were visible, and her hands were on top of the sheet. And I approached the bed, and I stared for a while in disbelief. And I watched the fan whirring on the side of the bed table. A fan was moving on the bedside table, and as it moved the princess's hair, and I could see her eyelashes moving. And I took her hand and said, "Wake up. You're asleep, aren't you? Wake up." And nothing happened. She was soft and warm. Not dead at all, to me. It was quite a while before I realized that she was actually not with us. And remembered what she told me about death. She said, at that moment when you pass, your spirit lifts from the body and you hang around for a while and watch. So I said, "You're here, aren't you? You're here. You're watching me. You're watching what I'm doing. And I'll try and do it the way you'd want me to do it."
At 11:30 a.m., Diana lands in Paris. Fayed immediately spots the paparazzi out of his window. As soon as the doors opened, cameras started clicking. The aggressiveness of the photographers and their sheer numbers would increase as the day progressed. Diana and Fayed arrive at the Ritz Paris, owned by his father, through the back door and occupy the Imperial Suite. At 5:40 p.m, Diana is in the salon. Dodi ventures to Raposi Jewelers, where he picks out 2 rings that will be delivered to the Imperial Suite. Shortly after midnight, on Sunday, August 31st, 1997, Al-Fayed and Diana, along with bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, left the Ritz Hotel in Paris. At 7 p.m, the couple exit the hotel through the rear entrance and are driven to the Fayed residence near the Arc de Triomphe. Photographers were waiting at the building's front door when they arrived. Fayed fumed. There was an ugly shoving match. Once inside, Fayed pulled his butler aside, telling him about his plan to propose that night. The ring was placed on the nightstand in his bedroom. He checked to ensure they had several bottles of Dom Perignon on ice for the big moment. The first restaurant they tried that evening, Chez Benoit, was quickly overrun by photographers. The couple returned to the hotel at 9:50. Utilizing the front entrance, they head for its Les Ballons restaurant. Diana orders Dover sole, vegetable tempura, a mushroom and asparagus omelette. Fayed ordered grilled turbot, quickly grows suspicious that photographers might pose as restaurant patrons, so he requests that their food be delivered to their room. With bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, Fayed and Diana attempt to evade photographers by leaving the hotel through its rear entrance to return to his apartment near the Arc de Triomphe. They enter the back seat of a black Mercedes S280 and are driven by Ritz security employee Henri Paul. By this time, Paul had a scotch and a beer. His blood alcohol level was determined to be more than 3 times France's legal limit. Diana and Fayed were the rear passengers. Trevor Rees-Jones, Fayed's family's personal protection team member, was in the right front passenger seat. The occupants were not wearing seatbelts. After leaving the Rue Cambon and crossing the Place de la Concorde, they drove along Cours la Reine and Cours Albert, the embankment road along the right bank of the River Seine, into the Place de Alma underpass. At 23 past midnight, Paul lost control of the vehicle.
Good evening. The People's Princess is dead. Across the country, across the world, millions are trying to come to terms with the awful tragedy of Diana's untimely death.
Fate in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong man. That tragic accident should never have happened. But that's what it must be. It must be an accident.
The Mercedes approached this tunnel, a notorious accident black spot with its sharp dip and slight bend at nearly 100 miles an hour. It brushed a white Fiat Uno, travelling much more slowly, and span out of control.
The most important factor was the driver, Henri Paul. The investigation showed that not only did he not have the proper license to drive the powerful Mercedes, he was also more than 3 times over the drink driving limit and also taking prescription drugs. So you put all those 3 factors together and you can understand why before he crashed into the 13th pillar of the Alma Tunnel, Henri Paul's feet didn't even touch the brakes.
I knew at that moment that the reason she died was because of a failure in her protection.
On September the 6th, 1997, 2.5 billion people tuned in to watch Diana's funeral.
I feel like everyone else in this country today, utterly devastated. Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her 2 sons, the 2 boys. Our hearts go out to them. We are today a nation in Britain in a state of shock, in mourning, in grief that is so deeply painful for us. She was a wonderful and a warm human being. Though her own life was often sadly touched by tragedy, she touched the lives of so many others in Britain, throughout the world, with joy and with comfort. How many times shall we remember her? In how many different ways? With the sick, the dying, with children, with the needy. When with just a look or a gesture that spoke so much more than words, she would reveal to all of us the depth of her compassion and her humanity.
I think she'll be remembered for her practicalities of dealing with life, really, and the impact that she had on ordinary people.
When things were going well and they were doing things together, she sort of thought, she said to him, we could really change things together, the power of the 2 of us together.
In most circumstances when the man on the street, if you like, meets royalty. It's in a situation that's planned, it's corralled, and you stand there and you'll be there, and somebody will come along and you'll shake your hand, don't say anything, you either bob or you curtsy, and then you move on, and that's your lasting impact of royalty. And that wasn't Diana. You know, Diana would come along, this shaking of the hand and this bobbing nonsense, you know, she would often say, don't call me ma'am, call me Diana, you know, and engage them in a conversation that people would never forget.
Let us commend our sister Diana to the mercy of God, our Maker and Redeemer. Diana, our companion in faith and sister in Christ, we entrust you to God. Go forth from this world in the love of the Father who created you, in the mercy of Jesus Christ who died for you, in the power of the Holy Spirit who strengthens you. At one with all the faithful, living and departed, may you rest in peace and rise in glory, where grief and misery are banished, and light and joy evermore abide. Amen.
Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic.
I wish she was alive to do many more for the country, you know, but sadly God decided to take her, so we just had to pray for her, you know.
My feeling is shared by a lot of young French people. I think that we love that woman very much.
It's a way, it's so tragic and it's so romantic in a way too. It's horrible. I mean, it's just a horrible, horrible story.
What I say to you now, as your queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her two boys. I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death. I share in your determination to cherish her memory.
When I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did. I realized then their attention would inevitably focus on both our private and public lives. But I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become, nor the extent to which it would affect both my public duties and my personal life in a manner that's been hard to bear. At the end of this year, when I've completed my diary of official engagements, I will be reducing the extent of the public life I've led so far.
The death of Princess Diana, with Mr. Fayed and Mr. Paul, has brought the problems of celebrity culture and its coverage by all of us into sharp relief. We all need to think hard about how to solve them. This tragedy need not and should not have happened.
And here we are, 20 years later, we're still talking about her because Diana has become an icon. We're talking about her because she changed the rule book. She tore out pages from that dusty old book and she rewrote those rules. She changed the royal family forever. The ghost of Diana will always haunt the House of Windsor.